Hi, welcome to Keto Life Support, where we make your keto life sustainable, fun, and low stress. I'm Kim Howerton from theketonis.com, and I'll be coming to you weekly with some of my keto besties to bring you the practical, real-world keto advice that you need. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, and even if we have a doctor in the house, he or she is not your doctor, and nothing on this show should be taken as medical advice. Always check with a trusted medical professional about your personal medical concerns. Hi, this is Kim Howerton, and welcome to Keto Life Support. I'm super excited today because I get to have a really fun time talking to my keto bestie, Carrie Brown. Say hello, Carrie.
Yay! Hello, everyone.
So, as you might know, if you listened to the introductory episode, this podcast is a collection of the kinds of conversations that we keto folks have when we get together, and we tend to say, we really should have been recording this. And so there you go.
In fact, we just said that to each other.
We
were having this very, very animated conversation about smoked salmon, and I said, dang it, we should have been recording.
Right. And so, when I thought, what are the topics that people starting keto are like, I need help with this? Food is so central. I mean, it's a lot of it is about food, right? So, Carrie Brown, tell the people who you are. Everyone knows, but just go over it again.
I'm not sure everybody does know. In fact, I think far more people don't know than do know. So I'm going to work from that premise. Okay. I am obviously not American, although I've lived here for 18 years, a long time, mostly in Seattle, but recently moved to Connecticut. I am an ex-professional pastry chef, so I trained at the National Bakery School, which is part of South Bank University in London, and trained to be a pastry chef. I actually was the top student in my graduating year. The top student in the country in my graduating year. So it's something I was really, really passionate about, and I still am, but the irony is I can't use any of the ingredients that you would normally use in normal pastries. So that's been interesting. I now spend my time developing keto and low carb recipes for the world, mostly for free. I have a blog where I post those recipes and Facebook groups and all of that stuff so that I can help people to. So there's a lot of information about the keto science, the what it is, the what it does to your body, the why we should do it. What I do is I focus on helping people to put that into practice, i.e., that's all great and we all get that, but what do I put in my mouth? What do I actually eat? Oh, and by the way, can you make sure it's delicious? Because if it's not delicious, I'm going to find it really hard to keep going. So my part in this whole keto low carb scene is to help people translate the science of keto in terms of what it does, to translate that into what they actually put on their plate and what they actually get to eat to make the keto lifestyle a delicious, doable thing in their lives. I have 5 published cookbooks now, and I live in Connecticut with 3 cats and a couple of cameras and an awful lot of cocoa powder. And that's what I do. Oh, and I record with Carl Franklin, the awesome Carl Franklin from Two Keto Dudes. I am the new dude or dudette. And so we are helping also to educate people via that means. So that's what I do. I'm all keto all the time, and I'm just looking to help folks to be able to get on the keto lifestyle and to stay on it so that they can heal and have happier, healthier lives.
Nice. Excellento. I'm excited.
I should probably also mention that I'm crazy.
Good to know.
Which is the other thing that a lot of people know me for, is actually that I I like to say cured, but some people will fight me on that. Cured bipolar 2 disorder. So I have been completely unmedicated now for 3.5 years. And I have been bipolar 2 symptom free for that same amount of time. And that is in large part due to the ketogenic diet, which is how I came to it. So that's the other thing that the people should know about me, is that I'm an expert in mental health, expert from the view of having lived it rather than having been trained in it as a medical professional.
Got it. Life experience. And Carrie and I also bond about this because I am a lifelong depression sufferer, which turned out to be more complicated than simply having depression. It was in large part a misdiagnosed thyroid illness. I'll go into that later at some other time, but Carrie and I definitely have a strong bond both about our deep love of food and about the fact that we use the ketogenic diet to manage our mood.
Wait, you love food?
Crazy, but true.
I didn't know that about you.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Tell me another one, Carrie Brown.
So shall we tell our lovely listeners about the time you came to stay with me in Connecticut and I took you to one of my favorite restaurants and we had this meal and we kind of embarrassed ourselves because we were sitting there in the corner and we were like oohing and ahhing over the food and the waitress was laughing at us and we had a smacking good time. There was lots of good food involved. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I will always say if you are a true foodie, now I use the term foodie like everyone understands what that is. Someone who loves food. I don't know how else to say it. If you're like and you're like into food, it isn't just like it's fine when it's there. You're like into it. But when you go out to eat with another person that is equally as enthusiastic about food, it is a very different experience.
It's magical.
Because I mean, it's like sex, right? Not that Carrie and I did not have sex. It's Carrie's expression right now is hilarious. But I mean, if you're with someone in this activity that is equally as excited about what you're doing, it really enhances the experience.
I wondered where you were going there for a moment, but
don't you kind of agree? You have to if you're at a mismatched enthusiasm level with somebody that you're eating a meal with, it's kind of a letdown.
Absolutely. When I eat out with people, there's definitely, I will take them to different places if they're not going to appreciate something, then I would rather go somewhere else where they will appreciate, rather than have my bubble burst.
Yeah. Because it's so sad. It's like you got somebody the best gift ever and they open it and they're like, oh. You're like, yeah, all right, give back.
Yeah. So when are you coming back? Because we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun eating at places and oohing and ahhing and making the waiter laugh.
I think I'll be back on the East Coast in May, so we'll have to plan something then, if not sooner.
Okay, that's probably not soon enough, but I'll work on you.
We'll work with it. I know.
We're off to Denver, or maybe this will be aired after Denver, so maybe we'll have snuck away and found some delights while we're there. We will see each other
several times in the next few months, so it's going to be exciting because we like to go to the conferences. Yeah. Okay, so let's dive into what we wanted to talk about today, which is we just thought we'd use this opportunity to talk about some of our favorite foods and some of our favorite things about food. We called it the Foodie Q&A. We're going to interview each other.
Kim and Carrie's favorite things.
That's right. And because Kim and Carrie like things, we like to like things. We really do. Right? I mean, we like to like. So this will not be the only favorite things episode. We can pretty much promise.
Yeah, and our favorite things might change.
We may
with time
decide we hate something we used to love.
Yeah. That's true. That is true. So, what should we start with?
Well, I think we should start with our favorite piece of kitchen equipment. Now, I want to preface this. Now, sometimes we might say something is our favorite. What makes something your favorite? Right?
So if you'd have asked me this yesterday, I would have said my magical egg poaching device, which is an electric egg cooker. And it's you can hard boil, soft boil, you can make omelets, you can make poached eggs, you can do things with it. I've only ever used it to poach eggs, and it is like the best thing ever because I love poached eggs, but they always felt like they were a bit of a pain, and it always felt like I grew up in a house where my mother had a poached egg pan. So a pan, and you put water underneath, and it has a little shelf, and then you put the cups, the plastic cups, in the hot water and crack the eggs in, and off you go. So I grew up having these perfect poached eggs that came out of a thing. But the whole boiling water thing always felt a little bit inaccurate to me somehow, and you could quite easily go wrong with poached eggs. So even though I love poached eggs, I've kind of avoided them. And then somebody sent me this egg cooker as a gift. And I was reminded yesterday I was actually writing about poached eggs in a blog post, like you do, and was reminded how much I love my egg cooker. So if you'd have asked me yesterday what my favourite gadget was, it would have been my egg cooker, my electric egg cooker.
Well, what has changed?
It's a new day.
Okay. Do you have a favorite today?
I haven't done any cooking today. And I haven't written about any food things today yet. So you share your favourite cooking gadget, and I'll see if another one springs to mind while you're talking.
All right. So my favorite cooking gadget, and again, I just want to say, like, to me, for something to be your favorite, it has to borrow a little Marie Kondoism, spark joy. You have to feel like excited about it. It can't just be like, well, I use a fork every day. You know, it can't just be function. It has to be like, oh, I get to use the thing, and it's special.
If only I could really get you to understand how much joy my egg cooker sparks in me.
I felt the joy.
And actually, Dr. Ken and Nisha Berry can attest to the egg cooker joy, because when they stayed with me, we had poached eggs out of my egg cooker for several days, and they wanted to go home and buy an egg cooker because the poached eggs are just perfect, and they take almost zero effort. And it tells you when they're done, and it's magical. Anyway, we had poached eggs a lot when they were here, so it's not just me. Okay. But the joy that the egg cooker brings me, enormous.
Got it. Well, I have a little story, as I do with many things. So when I was in college, eons ago, I decided I wanted a KitchenAid mixer, because I was the baker in my family. This was well pre-keto, but I was always baking. And so I wanted a KitchenAid mixer. It was like the thing I wanted so much. And my mom, I'm like a college student. I was about to graduate. She's like, what do you want for a college graduation present? And I was like, a KitchenAid mixer. And I was not a culinary student, mind you. And she's like, oh, I'll get you one when you get married. And I said, I don't understand. So
you still don't have your KitchenAid mixer?
No, because I thought that was ridiculous. She's like, it'll be on your registry, blah, blah, blah. I was like, I'm 22 years old. I would like to say I'm now 42 years old. I'm not married. So if I had waited to get married, I would be sad. So I bought myself a KitchenAid mixer as my graduation from college present to myself. So my first apartment.
Because that was before Black Friday and Amazon deals. So you even paid full price for it.
I bought it at Costco.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And so I got it's a white KitchenAid mixer. It's the larger size. It's not the flip top. It's the crank style. And I still have it and I love it. And I recently talked to Matt and Mega, Matt and Mega of Keto Connect, because they did a episode where they talked about overrated kitchen implements. And so I ran into them last month at a convention. I was like, I have a bone to pick with you because you do not love the KitchenAid mixer like I love the KitchenAid mixer. And they were like,
Kim,
it's so, what?
Kim,
what?
I don't love mine either.
What is wrong with you? Do you know how many egg whites you have to beat when you're a keto cook? It does it like that.
I use my hand mixer.
Okay, fine.
I seriously, I do have a KitchenAid, but I've only had it, but maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years, and it's butter yellow.
Oh, pretty.
And I did wait till Black Friday and got it for half price because I'm like, I'm not spending that amount of money on a KitchenAid mixer. So I did get it for like $220, and it's the big one with the flip top and all the things. But yeah, I just wasn't spending that amount of money on a KitchenAid. But I do have one, but I actually don't even know where it is right now.
I mean, I live
That's how
in
little
a
I miss
tiny
it.
place in California because the square footage here is ridiculous. And I have the KitchenAid mixer on the counter, wedged between the microwave and the blender. But still, that's the beauty. It has to, if you put your KitchenAid mixer away, and that thing weighs like 300 pounds, it needs to be out on the counter or else, the pain of use outweighs the beauty of its convenience.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm with Matt and Mega.
Okay, fine. We need Team KitchenAid. Hashtag.
But this is why we are the yin and yang of KitchenAid equipment, so it's all good.
I do have a KitchenAid blender, and they're not very great. So I'm just going to say it's not there are some brand issues. Anyway, whatever.
So if I had to pick one thing that I probably use the most, and the one thing that blows my skirt up the most, it would probably be my Vitamix.
Yeah, I need to get one of those. I'm jealous.
Yeah. It because it does make magically smooth things. So I do, and I'm just thinking about what's the one I use the most, and does it bring me joy? Yes, it really does. My Vitamix does bring me joy. It's always brought me joy. It's never been a disappointment. But don't pay full price for one.
Right.
Go to Vitamix.com and type in refurbished and get the refurbished one because they're way, way cheaper. But they come with the same 7-year guarantee, and you would never know that it wasn't brand new. Mine came in a box, looked brand new, felt brand new. I've been using it like a crazy woman because I do it all day long, and you would never know. So don't pay full price.
Do you ever wonder how they get the blenders to do refurbishments from?
No.
That's just me. I'm like, do they go to estate sales? Like,
I'm probably starting to sound a bit cheap here, but
whatever.
I don't like spending money I don't have to.
People ask these questions. They are on budgets. And so, yeah. Somebody asked me the other day if a yogurt I tried was worth the money. And I was like, I have to admit, I have never budget shopped for a single container of yogurt. So, I mean, I could understand if I was buying a lot of yogurt. But so, we all have different budget levels.
Yes, we do. And it's all actually, there's a whole podcast episode there, because I've always been fascinated about how someone would say that, $5 was a lot for a packet of gourmet sausages, but they have no problem spending $5 on a cup of coffee at Starbucks.
Priorities.
West Coasters, obviously, because there's barely any over here on the East Coast for us to know, and Dunkin' Donuts coffee is like $1.50. But the point is, it's $5 for a cup of coffee. Don't even think about it. But in the grocery store, you're looking at something that would be a whole meal or two, and it's like, no, that's too much. So that's fascinating to me, the psychology around
pricing,
how we price. We should do write that down.
Absolutely, I'll write that down.
We should do a whole episode on that.
I'll write that down. Okay, so let's go to the next favorite thing. Your favorite herb.
Well, that's easy.
What is it?
But this is going to open a can of worms, and we both know that, because I posted about this herb on Facebook the other day, And Kim said, I
don't like it.
So, my favourite herb, without a doubt, is tarragon.
Tarragon.
Yes.
It's pretty.
She's trying desperately. She's such a sweetheart. I love Kim because she's trying so hard to think of something, anything positive that she can say about tarragon. Bless her.
It makes my mouth make sad face.
But tarragon's a fancy herb.
I don't know.
It's like one of the top 4 that those French people use.
I know. I have a theory maybe that it's sort of like cilantro. Like maybe some people have a broken gene where it
You think there's a tarragon gene?
Maybe there's a tarragon gene. Because you know how like some people, you give them cilantro and they're like, why am I eating soap? Like it literally tastes like soap to them.
That's me. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah,
cilantro.
Tarragon tastes poisonous to me. Anyway. Okay. But why do you
remember
like
the last time you ate tarragon?
About 7 months ago when my boyfriend was making some pickles and decided he was going to try some tarragon in the pickles.
Oh, because
is tarragon what's used in cornichons?
I don't know.
Anyway, because I like cornichons.
But there's been things, so I've met a lot of people, at least virtually, over the years, and people have, when they get my cookbooks or they use my recipes, and I have so many comments or people or emails or whatever where people have said, oh my goodness, I hate Brussels sprouts, and now I love Brussels sprouts and it's all your fault, or oh my goodness, I hated leeks, but now I love leeks. And so I have this kind of theory that a lot of the time, we might think that we don't like something, but it's actually because we've only had it in a way that's been cooked really badly. So it might not have been the Brussels sprout. So we might be blaming the Brussels sprout for what the cooker did.
You know, I am open to trying one of your tarragon dishes next time we get together.
Yay!
You may redeem my tarragon-less status.
I will have something in backup so you don't go hungry.
Thank you.
I do have a rule in my home that if you come here, you don't have to like it, but you do have to try it.
Thanks, Mom.
Ha! So, all right.
Okay.
Tarragon.
Tarragon is your favorite. Okay, so mine, it's not like the most widely used one, but it brings me the most joy, is fresh dill.
I do love dill too.
Fresh dill. I have these memories of when I was a kid and we do bagels and cream cheese and capers and tomato and lots of salt. No fish. No lox. Carrie and I were joking about this earlier. I hate salmon. So I would skip the lox.
We can see each other when we're recording, right? So Kim's looking at my face. She knows exactly where my brain's going because Kim's busy listing all the things that make life worth living, like bagels and cream cheese and smoked salmon. That's what you're and dill. Like I know,
and
dill
that was my point.
Salmon.
And then just a ton of fresh dill on there.
Like dill and smoked salmon is like the Romeo and Juliet of the fish world, and you don't like smoked salmon. It's so weird.
You know, it's again, there is, maybe my taste buds are broken, but salmon, when I put it in my mouth, I just feel like I'm eating something rotten. Like it's an instantaneous, I can't.
Is that like with canned salmon, with poached salmon,
poached salmon,
because they're so complete. That's one of the things that's wonderful about salmon is that, and I was writing about this too yesterday as well as poached eggs. I was writing about salmon and how the canned salmon is so, I mean, it's like a whole nother fish. It's so different from fresh poached salmon. And both of those are completely different to smoked salmon, like Locke's smoked salmon. And it's just like, but you hate all three types.
I hate them all. It's even the smell. It might even just start with the smell. Like, I am like a perpetually pregnant woman who's not pregnant. Anything, like, you know, any smell that's going to send a pregnant woman running from the room, you can pretty much bet is also going to affect me in a negative fashion. Maybe I have just overactive taste receptors. Anyway. Science has not yet figured this out for me. But anyway, I love dill was my point.
Okay, so let's talk about dill for a moment. I love dill also. It goes brilliantly with smoked salmon.
Or eggs, actually, scrambled eggs, everything.
Any kind of salmon it goes well with. What do you like it best with?
Well, I use it on my keto bagels in the fashion I described earlier. But I love it with egg. So if you chop up some fresh dill with just scrambled, like a soft scrambled egg, it's amazing to me. It's one of the best things.
I don't think I've ever done eggs with dill. So now I'm going to have to do eggs with
delicious.
Dill. Okay. So what else do you do with dill?
Well, I do eat one type of fish I do eat, which isn't really a fish, but it is a seafood, is shrimp. And so I make a sauce for shrimp that has basically sour cream, mayonnaise, some diced onion, lemon juice, and dill.
Yeah, no, I love dill too. And if people are now, if dill is new to you or you want some other ideas about what it can go with, other things that dill goes with, cucumbers goes really, really, really well with cucumbers. Eggs, as Kim said, I've never done that, so I need to go do that now. Fish, dill goes, and Kim doesn't eat. Do you eat any fish? No. Okay, so Kim doesn't eat any fish.
You want to know another sad fact? My boyfriend is an avid fisherman. Anyway.
Okay, so maybe both of you should come and stay, and then I'll do 2 different meals and keep you all happy. What else? So it goes well with fish. Pickles. Dill, of course. Dill goes brilliantly with pickles. It also goes, and I know this is like a bit of a taboo word, but dill also goes well with potatoes and potato salad. So if you're using cauliflower for your potato salad, or cauliflower, or your radishes instead of potatoes, or your cauliflower mashed instead of potatoes, you might think to do something different to change it up, you could use some dill, because that works brilliantly.
Yeah, there's fresh dill in my potato salad. Exactly what you just described. And then I have something that I call the double dilly salad, which is basically chopped pickles, chopped cucumbers, chopped dill, all mixed together.
So the great thing about what Kim's just said is that you can actually make your potato salad taste more like the real thing because you're using something that would go with the real thing. Like putting dill in it actually makes it seem more like you're eating potatoes.
Right.
That's just kind of the way our brains and our noses and our taste buds work. So that's actually a really great idea for scratching that potato salad itch is using dill in your potato salad made with cauliflower.
Yes, I use radishes, but yes, either way.
Okay, whatever you use. So salads and salad dressings, really great with dill. All the salmons, really great with dill. Don't listen to Kim. They go really well.
I support the use
dill.
of proper salmon in people's eat. I'm not telling you not to eat. I'm just saying I don't like it.
Cabbage, dill goes really, really well with cabbage. If you're one of those people like me that does better, feels better on a level of green leafy veg or non-starchy veg, then cabbage, dill, put some dill in your cabbage. That's going to excite things in a way that you may not have done before. And also if you're looking to mix some herbs, dill and cilantro go really, really well together. I'll never do that because I have the cilantro gene. So Kim will be down in California doing the cilantro dill thing and I'll be eating the salmon.
Okay. Sounds good. Excellent. Okay. So we talked about our favorite herb and then it's a related but different topic. Your favorite spice.
Well, that's easy for me. It's cardamom.
Oh, that's fancy.
It is fancy, and unfortunately, it comes with a fancy fancy price. It's the typically the third most expensive spice on earth behind, drum roll, salmon.
What?
No, saffron and vanilla. So saffron is the most expensive, then comes vanilla, and vanilla is getting more expensive by the second, it seems, right now. Somebody said that there'd been a failed crop somewhere. And then cardamom. So cardamom is expensive, so I don't use it like every day, but it definitely, in my little taste bud world, it's got a magical, almost perfumey, heady scent to it, and it's quite unlike anything else, and I absolutely love it. Mostly, I've used it in desserts. This is close to your home. My first introduction with cardamom came long before keto. I was in hospital with a very sick kidney in Manhattan. I went to Manhattan on a business trip, got really sick. My kidney nearly died. And I was in hospital, and some people that I didn't know came to visit me. And we were talking about how I was taking a road trip to San Francisco. And they said, you have to go to Dynamo Donuts down by the hospital in San Francisco. And you have to have the maple bacon donut. And I'm like, okay. So 2 weeks later, after I got my kidney repaired and was taking my road trip to San Francisco, I went to Dynamo Donuts. And because I'm very good with instructions that I like.
Nice. I have never been to Dynamo Donuts.
So, well, and now you can't. But anyway, let me tell you, best donuts I've ever eaten. Anyway, so I go to Dynamo Donuts, and I decided that 3 donuts, remember this is well before keto. So I decided that 3 donuts and a hot chocolate was a perfectly acceptable breakfast. Mm-hmm. And I said, and I do this a lot, surprise me. They said, what flavor donuts do you want? And I said, surprise me. And they gave me an apricot cardamom donut. And they took me, I don't even remember what the other 2 they gave me were. Didn't even care. Could not get past the apricot cardamom donut. I went out the back, sat in their little patio out the back with my hot chocolate and my 3 donuts. And that donut was like the best donut I've ever eaten in my life. And yeah, it was the cardamom. And so I came home and I started developing recipes around cardamom. Nice. But mostly desserts, and probably because that was my introduction to cardamom was via dessert in my mind. They're kind of married now.
It lends itself that way. I make a coconut cardamom panna cotta.
That sounds fabulous.
Yeah, it's simple, real simple.
Yeah. And cardamom is often used in the Nordic countries, up in the Scandinavias, the Finlands and the Swedens of this world. They like using cardamom for things up there too. So it's typically used most in India, right, and then in the Nordic countries. In India, they use it a lot with other spices in savory dishes. So in India, it's not typically used for sweet things, but in the Nordic countries it is. Anyway, I absolutely love it. And we're going to, at some point, if not today, at some point we're going to share one of my recipes using cardamom, so you can go try it.
All right, so I thought about this. This isn't a fancy spice, but it is my favorite thing. It's McCormick onion salt. It is just onion salt, but I grew up with this kind of onion salt in my pantry, and if I put it on meat, I'm like so happy. It's not super, pretty much that's what I do. I take out some steak or hamburger or whatever, I throw some McCormick's onion salt on it. I am such a happy camper with that flavor. So it's not fancy as opposed to the cardamom, but it brings me joy.
I think we found something we agree on.
You like that too?
I love onion salt.
So good.
The other thing I love is onion powder. So I'll use that in my recipes too.
Yeah, certainly if you're making a complex recipe, it's better to get powders than premixed salts, because like the salt quality in the McCormick's is probably not the kind of salt quality, blah, 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 blah. But if you just need an easy grab and sprinkle, it's pretty delightful.
I love onion salt.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We are pro onion salt. Okay. Excellento. Let's talk about cooking techniques.
Oh.
Do you have a favorite cooking technique? I mean, it's really, for me, it's more about what am I cooking and what's going to make that best.
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure about the word technique. What do I like doing most? I like making ice cream the most, but I'm not sure that would be a technique.
This is open to interpretation.
And it's certainly in my recipes, which I deliberately made without the use of eggs so that they would be super easy and no fail for even someone that has never walked into a kitchen before. So I did them without making a traditional egg custard because those can go wrong and they involve heating. But making ice cream is just my favorite thing, and it's my favorite thing to develop. Developing new ice cream flavors for keto is my favorite thing. So I'm not sure that's a technique, though.
Ice creaming. Okay, got it. All right.
Ice creaming without eggs. I'm not sure that's a technique at all. But the other thing, I guess techniques, the other thing I do most of is just pan frying meat. So pork chops and lamb chops. Pan, pork chop, pan, lamb chop. 5 minutes dinner. Yeah.
I am also team high heat pan fry. It just works.
Yeah.
Because I love my meat like seared on the outside, but really rare on the inside. And
I forgot that about you. Yes, you like it kind of mooing.
I like it still mooing. So, but I also want it to be like have a nice crust and, really get that like flavor. So yeah, high heat pan, flip it frequently. That's my method. And it's joy. It's joy for me.
So can this is kind of related, and don't be offended when I say this, and because we are our keto BFFs, so I can say this and nobody will get hurt. For the absolute, I know you like your steak really, really rare, like really mooing, but I have to tell you that the maximum flavor will be reached in a steak if you cook it to 131 degrees.
Okay, I've never tested the heat level of my steak.
And that's science, not anything else. That's actually science, not my opinion.
What temperature did you just say?
131. So, and the science is that is the temperature at which the maximum amount of fat will be rendered. So you get, and of course the flavor is where the fat is. So you get maximum fat rendering at that temperature, which means you get maximum flavor in your steak. For those of you who like it really, really rare and you're not cooking it to 131, you might want to just try the 131 thing just once, because you might actually find that it has a flavor you like better, because there will be literally more flavor in it because more of the fat is rendered.
And I will say that it's not a requirement that it be still mooing, honestly. I just don't like it. Like, I would much rather an undercooked steak than an overcooked steak. There is a moment it passes that you can't get back. And it makes me cry because it's so sad.
So 131 is typically medium rare.
Well, I'm good with medium rare.
Okay. So, yeah, and you may do this and decide, no, really, I like it mooing better. But so I was just sharing that not as an opinion piece, but as a science thing, is that's where the maximum flavor will be because of the fat rendering. However, you may still prefer it at 125.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to cook my next steak the way that I love it, and I'm going to take its temperature and see. Maybe I am like a steak savant and I just know.
I actually, I actually ask for it in restaurants. When they say, how would you like it? I'll say 131 degrees, please.
You are a pain in the ass, aren't you?
Well, actually, not in a regular place. I won't do that. But there's this, before I left Seattle, before I moved from Seattle a year ago, I found it was like so sad. Like 6 weeks before I left Seattle, a girlfriend, invited me to this restaurant called Bateau, which is French for boat. And I have no idea why a restaurant that only serves steak, that's all they serve is steak, why it will be called Bateau. I did read up about it, but I don't remember why. But anyway, this restaurant, I'm telling you, they grow their own cows. Like, nice. This is steak from, what would you say, soup to nuts. This is like, they grow their own cows on their own grassland, in their own field, in like all the things, right? So they have complete control over the entire process from
farm to table, really.
From conception of the cow to it arriving on your plate. So I felt like I was not being obnoxious to say I would like my steak cooked to 131 degrees, please.
They really appreciated the level of
they were like, oh, somebody knows. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, Bateau in Seattle, if you're in the Pacific Northwest or you're visiting Seattle and you like steak and you want to go to a restaurant where you will feel so normal, like, because the entire restaurant, everybody in the entire restaurant has a plate with nothing but a piece of steak on it.
Nice.
Right.
Nice. Well, there's Low Carb USA is doing an event in May in Seattle. We might have to go.
There you go. Okay. So yes, Bateau in Seattle. Awesome. Anyway, there we go. I'm not obnoxious everywhere, but when I'm going to somewhere like that, then I think it's okay for me to say I'd like my steak at 131 degrees, please.
Yeah, it's all about the audience. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I would say that my favorite cooking technique, when I'm not doing high heat cook on the meat in pan on stove, is the low and slow braise in the oven. That is probably my favorite. I have 2 speeds on meat. You either cook it very low in the oven for a very long time, or you cook it very fast in a pan.
Well, that's super interesting because just this week, I think it was Tuesday, I came up with this lamb shanks recipe because lamb is super yummy, but a lot of people haven't had lamb because it's expensive, or typically it has been expensive and quite hard to find. Lamb is coming down in price and it's getting more and more widely available. So I wanted to do some lamb recipes for people who've never had lamb and wanted to start out. I do too. It's my favorite. I absolutely love lamb. So I was actually braising some lamb shanks the other day. So it's kind of interesting that you should say that's your favorite, because I had a really very, very fun time braising some lamb shakes. So some lamb shanks in the oven the other day. So go braising!
Yay! All right. So let us discuss something that we have definitely bonded over that we mentioned earlier. Eating out. Okay. Going out to restaurants. What has, favorite is hard here, but can you describe a peak dining experience and what you ate? Why was it so good? While on keto, I will say. We're going to limit this one.
I was going to say, does it have to be keto? Because
yeah, it should, because otherwise we're just a show about torturing people.
Yeah, and that, well,
some people would like it, but it would be a smaller audience. Yes,
we're not here to torture you. We're here, actually, to help you to be able to eat with the joy and the deliciousness that we talk about non-keto foods. That's what we're here to make sure that you can still have that even while you're on keto. So I won't do the whole meal. I'll just tell you that I had a lobster thermidor in France once.
What is a thermidor?
I can't really, it's, so restaurant in middle of nowhere, France. It was outside of Paris. I was selling chocolate at the time for Valrhona, which is the best chocolate in the world, in case you ever wondered. I was a sales rep for Valrhona, and the boss took us to Paris, and we were eating out. And this restaurant, oh my goodness. And I had lobster thermidor, and it was one of those places where you choose your own lobster, and I'd never done that. So that was exciting. And I chose my own lobster, and I got this thermidor, and it was, I just can't even tell you how good that was. And I won't describe the rest of the meal because Kim will smack me. So I'll just tell you that the lobster thermidor was one of the best things I've ever eaten. In recent times, however.
What was so wonderful about it? Was it like really rich? Was it a certain flavor? It was,
but you have to remember this was a seriously long time ago.
Okay.
And I don't remember the specifics of it, but if someone ever says to me, what has been your favorite meal ever? It's always that. It's always the lobster.
Nice. Peak memory.
Also, there's a restaurant. This is a keto meal, but it wasn't a keto restaurant, and I wasn't keto. But foie gras is one of my favorite things. And there's a restaurant in Seattle whose name escapes me right now. But one of the days I went, I was actually hosting. I had a team of people who worked for me, about 10, and I took them out to this dinner, and this place was really fancy. And they had steak, which came with slices of foie gras on top. Hmm. And my eyes rolled so hard, they nearly fell out of my head. It was the best thing ever.
Nice. Nice.
But recently, there's a restaurant in Chester, in Connecticut, called the River Tavern. And I had this fish stew. And I keep meaning to call them up and say, how did you make that? Because the broth, it was a stew that was in a broth. So it was very, very thin liquid with a pile of seafoody things in it. It wasn't an emulsified soup or a thick soup, or it was like enormous lumps of food in a thin broth.
Wasn't it chowder?
Yeah, no, but it wasn't creamy. The broth was a thin, clear broth. Yeah, it wasn't chowder. Wasn't a chowder at all. The broth, I ended up like trying to just drink the broth because it was hands down, the most flavorful broth I have ever eaten in my life. And I could literally have just had an enormous bucket of that broth hot. And I keep meaning to go back and ask them. The River Tavern, and you and I went there with Carl and Emmy and his other daughter, and so that's where it was. But it was a New England fish stew, and it was magical.
Yeah.
Now the River Tavern is one of those places where they bring a whole new meaning to the term farm to table. That I just absolutely amazing. The menu changes every single night. And fresh farm-to-table food every single night. So if you're ever over here, the River Tavern in Chester, Connecticut, and you need to book because it's incredible, it's packed every night. If you don't reserve,
a foodie town.
Yeah, if you don't book, you won't get a seat.
All right. So I would say that my most favorite meal recently was at a place called The Wolf in Oakland. For old-time foodies in the Bay Area, it used to be Beowulf, which was sort of a fancy place to go out to dinner when I was younger, and it got taken over by some people who actually also own a restaurant called the Wood Tavern, I think. But they now run a place called The Wolf, and with kind of, I guess, a nod to the old name. And they serve really solid food. And what I got was a ribeye and a side of bone marrow that had been cut in half. So it had been cut, because bone marrow, you might get the whole thing and then you have to kind of dig in it.
Widthways or lengthways?
Lengthwise.
Okay, so it's like a boat.
There was like a flat, it was flat on top. Mm-hmm. Because I find when they cut it the other way and you have to like dig with a teeny spoon, I'm never happy with that solution. It doesn't really work. So it was like a scoop out of this bone marrow. So they had covered it with onions and then put it under the broiler just for a couple of seconds, basically. So the bone marrow wasn't liquid. It was still gelatinous, but it was warm and it had infused this oniony flavor into it and then served with this perfectly cooked ribeye. It just was such a good, meaty experience. And what was hilarious was at the same meal, we're sitting down to this meaty, loving joy I'm having. My dinner partner says that he's become a vegetarian. So it was there was a bit of a like ironic contrast going on as well.
It's kind of, we may live a long way apart, but I tell you, we're definitely BFFs because we're connected because I was just yesterday looking at bone marrow in the grocery store.
Yeah.
And then you come up with a bone marrow story.
It's
just like all the things you've mentioned. And I'm like, wait, what? That was me this week. Like, stop it.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. And at this restaurant, actually, they served, I was with my family another time, the Wolf, and they served a orange panna cotta. And it gave me the idea, because, my family gets desserts and I'll be like, what does it taste like? And how is it? So I got an idea. And so now I have an orange panna cotta in my repertoire because I'm a fan of the panna cotta.
Yeah. I need to figure out how to recreate this New England fish stew.
You really do. Sounds good.
I may have to go and meet the chef.
I mean, a good chefs come in a lot of varieties. Some like to share and some don't, but we'll see.
Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. So let us finish out this list with, hold on one second. Sorry, I'm getting over a little cold here. What do you think, what is on your most overrated food list?
Wow.
Or because foods go through popularity periods. I mean, the Brussels sprout, I will say, is in a peak popularity time. It might be a little overdone, but I would not call it overrated.
It's an interesting question. I am not one that is ever swayed by popularity. I really, for the most part, do not give a rip what anybody else is doing or thinking or saying or dressing or any of that. I just do my own thing. So if I like something, I like it, whether the world likes it now or not. And I'll keep liking it even if the world decides they don't like it. So, but I'm kind of like that with everything. I'm trying to think if there's something that I've always been disappointed in, and I can't think of anything right now.
I can tell you mine.
Well, I mean, things like caviar to me. Caviar is like completely like, why? Well, I don't understand caviar at all.
If it were cheaper, would you feel the same way? Do you think?
No, I still don't understand caviar. It's like eating a teaspoon of salt to me. I just don't like it. And oysters. But it's hard for me to distinguish between things I don't like versus things I think are overrated, if you see what I mean.
To qualify, you have to either have stopped loving it or really don't like it, probably.
Yeah, no, I can't think of anything off the top of my head other than caviar is just like, I don't understand caviar.
Don't get it. Okay. Mine, this is because I live in California. This one is very real to me. Kale.
Oh, you and me.
Don't like kale.
Finally, there's something.
We agree.
I think kale is nasty.
There have been a few times when I've been like, oh, this is edible. Like, something has happened to the kale that made it okay to eat. But I have never craved kale or thought it was good.
Yeah, no, and I'm a big leafy green non-starchy veggie lover. I love my veggies, and I cannot get on board with kale at all.
Tastes like dirt.
Yeah, no, don't, no.
Okay.
No.
And it's it's fairly high in carbs for a leafy green, adding some insult to injury.
Well, it seems to me that the leaves are kind of thick.
I mean, it's probably heavy.
So I think it's like hoarding more carbs than the other leaves.
Right. More carb absorbent.
Yes, my feelings may be skewed by my dislike of the taste.
Right. Well, if it was, like kohlrabi, as an example, is a fairly high carb vegetable, but it is worth every carb it has.
Right.
I mean, it's a root veg, so it's on that borderline area, but it is sort of on the keto side. It can be included, but you can get pretty maxed out pretty fast. But I would rather one bite of kohlrabi than a field of kale.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right, good.
I'm with you.
Okay, see, we're close on several topics.
Yes, and worlds apart on others.
It's true. That's why we're, a good friend. You shouldn't be identical. Got to have some variety.
Yin and yang.
That's right. So I just want to wrap this up by first I want to talk about something, and then why don't we finish out the day with some recipes?
Okay.
All right. So we both were foodies and cooks before keto. And then there became a time when it became very clear in our lives that we needed to go keto for whatever our personal reasons for that were. Fixing a broken brain, fixing a broken hormonal system, both, whatever. But we went keto. And I know for me, in part, one of the reasons I was drawn to keto was I felt like my foodie self would be respected in keto. It was not a way of eating that I couldn't bring my whole self into. If that makes sense. Like, there are some ways of eating where you're like, I can't be myself in this diet because it doesn't mesh with how I like to eat, but keto does. And so I've now come to the place where I'm much more excited about, like, if somebody said, hey, Kim, there will be no repercussions tomorrow if you go off and just eat whatever non-keto food you want. Maybe that would be enjoyable, but I'm much more excited long term thinking, how can I just keep staying on this keto path? And so I'm coming around to a question here, which is,
it's your podcast, honey. You can do whatever you want.
Thank you. Kim's ramble. Which is, for you, I know one of your key components that I really agree with is that I've heard you say keto cooking can be better than any other kind of cooking.
Absolutely.
Why do you think that is true?
Because you're using whole, fresh ingredients.
I just got a look of like, what?
Like, I guess that's an odd question because maybe just I have a belief that I'm given some time and effort, I can make anything taste great. And I guess I just, over the years, I've had so much feedback saying, I hate Brussels sprouts. And I made your Brussels sprout and bacon chowder, and it's like my favorite thing to eat now. And I love Brussels sprouts, and it's all your fault. Or the number of people who now eat leeks because Carrie Brown cooks with leeks. And so I've seen people, and maybe it's because I'm British, and I bought a different kind of style and different vegetables and different things with me, which are normal to me. So I use them. And they're not normal to the majority of Americans. So giving them the opportunity to try new things. And I don't focus on recreating the old things. I just make up new stuff because that's what I enjoy doing. But I think a lot of people, we both have Facebook groups, but the people in my Facebook group are, a gal wrote the other day, she said, I have finally lost my fear of trying new things because Carrie Brown told me to try leeks and I did, and they were awesome. So now I feel confident that I can try all sorts of new things and not assume that it's going to be horrible, just assume that it's going to be a great experience. So I think there's, for me, it's just the putting together things in a different way, or putting things that people have never tried in front of them, is opening up this whole world of delicious food that people never knew. Plus, a lot of people, particularly in America, there's a whole generation or two of people who have never cooked. They have grown up with packet food, and despite their use of things to make us want more and sugar and bad fats to make it taste good, there is nothing that I think tastes as delicious as a great recipe and great whole food ingredients made into something that will not top every pre-packaged product out there.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think really bringing people back to cooking is so central to sort of a health mission of, if we want to be healthy people, we have to stop eating, for the most part, from, boxed, packaged things. And true gourmet food is whole, real foods and, using salt and fat in your cooking, or, enhancing those natural flavors, I think is ultimately such an amazing way to reconnect with your palate. And I think one of the things that happens over time, I remember years ago, the slow food movement started. It's called the slow food movement because it's supposed to be the contrast to fast food, right? It started in France, I think, or Italy, not France, Italy. And
they do love their siestas.
Right. We don't do fast food. We do slow food. And so this idea that what happens on keto is as you wean yourself off of a lot of these highly palatable frankenfoods that they create to hit the 12th taste receptor on your tongue with this certain rhythm. And it's all scientifically engineered to make you crave it. But once you actually regain your control of your taste buds and you start to be able to taste sweet, the subtlety of sweet in a vegetable and the subtlety, you regain this ability to have a much wider variety of tastes that you can appreciate. And I think that if you can go down this road of really fully embracing whole foods and cooking ketogenically, your ability to enjoy food will actually increase.
I absolutely, I know that's true just from the comments and the emails and the messages I get from people who are learning to cook or who are moving from a SAD diet to keto and, cooking real whole food and cooking recipes with weird ingredients or different combinations that they're not used to. And they're all saying, wow, this was just like the best thing ever. And I'm looking at it and going, that's a really simple recipe. There's nothing complicated about it. It's just simple whole foods that you can all get in your grocery store. And yet people think it's fantastic. I think as a nation, our taste buds have just been completely dulled by this. Hijacked or just dulled out by this constant onslaught of Krispy Kreme donuts and bad coffee and all the carby things. When you actually taste real whole food that's been cooked well, you using a recipe that's kind of balanced and built in a specific way, then you are going to discover that real food tastes amazing. And to me, it's not a change because I've always cooked like that. I may not have cooked keto all the time, but I've always focused on, whole fresh foods. I mean, there was some flour and sugar in there because that's how things worked as, thickeners and whatnot and breads. But I'm talking about most of my everyday meals have always been whole fresh foods because that's how I was raised. So I find the convenience foods very, very bland because that's not where I came from. That wasn't how I was raised. That wasn't how I grew up. So I think they're very bland. But if that's all you've ever had, that's normal to you. When you start eating real whole food, then it's just, it's amazing. It's like this whole new world opens up to you that actually tastes way, way better than what you were eating before.
Right. I mean, if you look at, say, like gourmet dining, if you really like, I'm sure you guys watch cooking shows, right? Even if you've never been to a super fancy restaurant, if you watch these cooking shows with some of these top chefs, the starches and the breads are the least interesting part of the dishes they make. Yeah. They're the aside. The real hero of the dish is the meat or some creative vegetable use. The real interesting part of the meal isn't the potato.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So okay. I have no hesitation in saying that keto is probably going to be more delicious than the way of eating you've just come from.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you.
If you have good recipes and you're willing to do a little bit of learning and put in a little bit of effort, you're going to have food that you enjoy more than the food you thought you were addicted to back then.
Right.
And you're going to be much healthier. Yeah. And the thing that you're going to be much healthier and leaner and happier as well.
Yeah. Cool. Excellent. I think this was a good first foray into the Keto Life Support Foodie episode. Will be coming to you regularly.
Well, I hope you all have enjoyed it. I hope it's been useful or funny or entertaining or something.
If you're not into food, this might not be your favorite episode. You'd be like, could you get to the point where like, this is the point? Anyway. But I will say, if you have recipes or foods that you want us to talk about, if you have topics around food you want us to talk about, visit our Facebook page at Keto Life Support on Facebook. And you can also find the link at ketolifesupport.com because we will take requests.
Yes. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, we exist to help you.
Okay. So let's finish today. Sorry, I just interrupted you.
That's okay.
What were you going to say?
I can't remember now.
Okay, fine. Let's talk about recipes.
Okay.
We can just copy Carl. Recipe. No, we can't do that. We have to do our own thing.
We do.
Yeah, okay, fine. Let us discuss recipes.
Okay.
All right. Sorry, we both love Carl, so he's our bestie. So, what would you like to talk about today on recipes?
Well, I was going to, since we talked about cardamom, which is my favorite spice, I was just going to share my recipe for apricot cardamom cupcakes.
Okay, I have to stop you because that sounds delicious, but apricot is often a food that people won't think might be keto. Discuss.
Right. So, these cupcakes are mini, i.e. they're literally 2 bites. So the amount of apricot that is in there is minuscule. I doubt that these cupcakes even have a gram of carbs in the whole thing.
Oh, that's exciting.
So, and I think, and I made these for an event that Carl was having, a little mini fest we had in New London, Connecticut. And, a couple of people said the same thing. And I'm like, but this is the point, right? You couldn't eat a whole normal sized big cupcake of apricots because, add up all that apricot bit and it would be too much. But there's no problem with you having 2 bites of something. If you love apricots, 2 bites of this cupcake with these 2 tiny shards of apricots in, you can enjoy that without having to deny yourself something that you love, but still taking care of your health.
Love it. Tell me about this recipe.
So, should I just share it?
Sure.
Okay. actually not been published yet, but by the time you hear this, it will be.
And we will provide links.
We will provide links to the recipe. But let me just pull it up here. Okay, so what you're going to need is you're going to need coconut or avocado oil. You're going to use that just to grease the whatever you cook them in. Now, because these are intended to be mini, i.e. 2 bites, you can use, I actually used silicone candy molds.
Okay.
To make them in so that they were small, but you can use whatever you like. If you have mini cupcake pans, you can use those. You can use whatever you like. The point of them being mini is 1, so you can have the taste of your favorite thing without blowing it. But 2, because it's a lot easier if you make tiny portions of things like this, like fat bombs or cupcakes or the treats. It's much easier to have one and then stop rather than have one big one. It's already
pre-serving sized for you.
Right, it's pre-serving size for you, but it's easier if you need a second one. It's easier than to get halfway through a big one because you're probably not going to stop. So you're probably going to overeat the big one, even if you're not still hungry. Whereas if you make them baby, then you can eat one and go, you know what, I do need another one. You still haven't even had half of a whole one, of a big one, if that made sense. So you're going to grease your silicone molds or your mini muffin pans or whatever you're going to use with avocado or coconut oil. Then you're going to get 1/2 ounce of chia seeds, and you are going to grind them in a coffee grinder until they're very fine, or you can buy ground chia seeds now. And black or white doesn't make any difference nutritionally. They're the same. The white ones look prettier, but I used black and they look just fine. Then you're going to want 6.5 ounces of almond flour. Obviously, the finer the better. Finer the better, and make sure it's not meal. You can tell the difference because meal is speckly. It's got brown speckles because that's the skin of the almond that's still in there. So almond flour is pure white and the finest you can find. Then you're going to want 1 ounce of egg white powder. I've stopped using whey protein powders because it's a minefield. It's, there's so many different ones. They taste different. They act different. They got weird ingredients in some of them. And because I can't control which one of the 500 different whey powders you might choose to use, then, and I do not want the recipe to fail. So I've stopped using whey protein powders and I use egg white powders because they're consistent. Egg white powders typically will not spike insulin, which a lot of whey powders do for a lot of people. So that's another problem. So 1 ounce of egg white powder. Then you're going to want 3 teaspoons of the magical ground cardamom. I highly recommend that you don't buy a jar of it. I recommend that you go to a store where it's got a loose bulk bin and just buy the amount you need. 1, because cardamom is expensive, so you don't want to waste any. And 2, spices go off, and sometimes you can forget how long they've been in your cupboard, and then you waste it because they have no potency anymore. So I highly recommend you don't buy jars. So you're going to need 3 teaspoons of ground cardamom, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of sea salt, and then either 2 ounces of either erythritol, or you can use xylitol or allulose. So whichever of those 3 sweeteners makes your gut and your mouth happiest. 4 ounces of dried apricots, which you're going to finely chop, 2 eggs, and 3/4 cup of cold water. And it's it sounded like quite a long list, but it's very, very simple. They throw together really, really easily. You put your ground chia and you add the almond flour, the egg white powder, the cardamom, the baking powder, the salt, and your sweetener, and you mix them together thoroughly. Then once you've finely chopped the apricots, you're going to rub them through the dry ingredients to separate all the bits because, they're going to be sticky. So then make sure that they're evenly distributed throughout the dry ingredients. Then you're going to whisk the eggs and the cold water in a bowl and add to the dry ingredients and then mix it all together really quick. And then you're going to carefully spoon or pour the mixture into the mini muffin cups. They should be slightly underfilled because these do raise. And then you're going to place them in the center of an oven at 300 degrees F for the mini ones. If you're making mini cupcakes, you should start looking at them at about 20 minutes. If you're making proper sized cupcakes, then 35 minutes. They will be golden brown. If you use allulose, they'll be a more golden brown than if you use xylitol or erythritol. Nice. When they're golden brown, you take them out of the oven. You leave them to cool just until you can, if you're using silicone, just leave them until they're cool enough that you can pop them out and then leave them to cool on a rack. And I won't do it, but if you will, we'll put the link in the show notes. And there's also an apricot frosting recipe to go with this. And they were fabulous and everybody at the mini fest absolutely loved them. And a lot of people, it was their first foray into cardamom. And they're big fans now. And they were also amazed that they could have this little cupcake with apricot, which is something they had missed and enjoyed, but they were happy just with the 2 bites. And they were like, that was awesome. And that's great. And then they moved on.
So if somebody wanted to be super diehard and they just could not reconcile apricots in this, could they make it without the apricots?
Yeah, absolutely.
They'd be a delightful cardamom cupcake.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Alrighty. Well, that sounds delicious and I want one.
And they're moist and they're delightful and they're just like, they have a texture just like regular cupcakes.
Nice.
In fact, you would have no idea that they're not made with normal things.
That sounds delicious. Well, mine is not a sweet recipe. It is a savory one. Since I was talking earlier about loving the braise, yes. I'm going to talk about my short ribs. So I love short ribs. So I'll go and get 6 to 8 short ribs. Now, just cut the standard style, not the flacken, which is the way like a Korean style would be cut. I just get the kind that they usually have them cut in the squares. And I will, a beef short rib, by the way, if anybody is confused. And then I will season them with salt. If you're into pepper, you can season them with pepper. I actually am pretty restrained on my pepper use. I find it can hijack my taste buds, but salt and pepper, if you do salt and pepper, salt, if you just do salt. You could use the aforementioned onion salt if you wanted to. But if I'm doing it with other flavors, I'll just do regular salt. I'll usually use Redmond's real salt. It's kind of my favorite salt. And then I keep a jar of bacon grease in my fridge. So I will put some bacon grease in a pan. You could do oil. You just need some kind of fat. Now, this might be surprising because short ribs are very high fat, but the fat is locked within it right now, and we need to brown them. So I'm going to heat some fat in a frying pan and just brown all the sides so there's a nice brown color on them. We're not trying to cook them here, but we're browning them well. You don't want to overcrowd the pan, so if you're doing a fair number, you want to do this in batches.
It also makes the browning also just makes the finished dish look just way, way better. I mean, if you want, I know they always say we eat with our eyes, but it is partly true. Mm-hmm. You just, if it's something that you think is going to be great tasting to eat because it looks fabulous, it probably will be. So the pre-browning really, really helps with that.
Right. So at this point, you could either cook these in an Instant Pot or you could cook them in the oven. So just so you guys know, you have options here. I tend to brown them in a pan either way. Like I don't do the saute feature on my Instant Pot usually because I don't know why I'm old school. I just think they do a better job in a pan. And so I would then take out a big pot and you can literally at this point throw the short ribs into an Instant Pot or a pot that is oven safe with a well-fitting lid. Throw in a cup of beef broth and you're done. You don't have to do anything else. I mean, you have to cook them, but you don't have to throw anything else in. But I'll give you a slightly fancier method, which is I'll quarter a yellow onion. So peel it and just quarter it. Throw it in the pan, throw it in the pot. Add the short ribs, and then add some bay leaves, just a few, and a few cloves, whole cloves, not ground cloves. And then I'll throw in a small can of diced tomatoes and 1 cup of very dry red wine. If you don't do wine, a cup of beef broth. And then in an Instant Pot, I will just seal that up and I will put it on 45 minutes high pressure natural release. Usually I just let it sit for like half an hour to 45 minutes once it's done before I go to check it or open it, and it's perfect. If I'm doing it in the oven, I'll put all those same ingredients in this pot with a lid that fits well on it, because you need to keep the liquid in there. And 300 degrees for 4 hours. You just low and slow for a long time. Excuse me. And then it's done and it's delicious. And I just eat those.
What do you serve it with, or do you just eat them?
I just eat them, but...
But if somebody, because I must admit.
I know, I'm just taking a sip of tea so I stop coughing on the microphone. Podcasting while ill is always an adventure. I have done these for company, and when company is over, I will do a lovely cauliflower celeriac mash. So basically doing the normal boiling of your cauliflower, but I also add some chopped celeriac or celery root to that. This is actually a technique I stole, not from Carrie Brown, although you could say that. I found out about it, quite a bit earlier from one of the chefs at Chez Panisse here, David Tanis. And so I do a mash with that with some butter and some cream cheese in the blender, make a nice mash, put it under the short ribs. And I love that. I also love short ribs with asparagus. So if you didn't want to do a mash, asparagus is a lovely accompaniment. That short rib is also delicious with a little shaved lemon on top if you want to shave some lemon zest on top to look really fancy when you serve it. If your family members are low carb or not low carb, but not keto, roasted carrots are also a lovely accompaniment. That would be something I would have done before I was keto. And at this point, I go with the cauliflower mash.
Bargain.
Yep. Deal. I still like to mention sometimes some of the accompaniments with these dishes that might not be fully keto, because I really think that your keto diet should be seamless with the rest of your family and friends. So if you're cooking for a big group of people, you don't have to cook an entirely separate menu because you're keto. It should integrate into everything else that's happening, in my opinion.
Right. And we do in my kitchen group on Facebook, I do get questions around, I'm doing this, but I have non-keto people coming. What could I do that goes with it for them that was different? So, and carrots is a great way. It also, carrots do tend to be on the sweet side taste-wise, so that might fill in the gap for the non-keto or the non-low-carb people around your table, because they're probably not going to be getting some super sweet dessert out of you. Yeah. So carrots might be a good way to kind of fill that gap for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, honestly, as a foodie, you should, like we talked about a little bit earlier, a few bites of apricot in your muffin, or, you're like, hey, I'm cooking a big thing of these roasted caramelized carrots for the table and I want to have 2 on my plate. There are some decisions you can make. There are some foods that are like kryptonite for your keto, and there are some that are just like, meh, maybe not the best idea to eat too much of this. And knowing that gray area can be a very important part of enjoying your life.
And also just being responsible for yourself. Like, you know, if you know that one apricot cupcake is going to send you on this crazy spiral of doom, then leave the apricots out.
Absolutely.
But
know yourself.
If you can self-regulate, if you can have, like we did at the mini fest, I made 4 baby desserts. So it was like 4 bites of dessert. Everybody was happy. Everybody, that was enough. If you can self-regulate and just have 1 or just have 2, then it's all goodness. But each of us, we all have to be responsible ultimately for what we put in our mouths. So just bear that in mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we haven't said that everybody can eat apricots in abandonment. I mean, we're not here saying,
there's
hey,
going to be somebody on the internet that says that tomorrow.
Right. We're not saying apricots are fine, everybody eat apricots. We're saying that 2 little shards of apricot in a mini cupcake, if apricots that you love them and it's going to help you to stay the course and enjoy life and keto more, if you have 2 shards of apricot in a cupcake once in a blue moon, then there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's what we're saying.
There is no keto god dictating everything keto from on high.
Right. Should you eat handfuls? Should you even eat 3 or 4 whole dried apricots? Absolutely not, because that's almost certainly going to have consequences that you don't want. So that's not what we're saying at all.
Absolutely. By the way, if we didn't say this at the beginning, this podcast is for adults. We expect that you, as an adult, we're not saying kids can't listen. We promise to try not to swear. But I mean, as an adult making adult food choices, we want you to use your judgment and make good decisions around food. And know yourself. And heck, there are some people who can't even eat a keto food, right? Like some people who are like, oh, I can't use sweeteners at all. It just brings up too many cravings for me. Well, nobody would say erythritol isn't keto, but for that person, it's not going to work.
Right.
And so you have to know your boundaries.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, why don't we wrap it up there? Thank you for joining me today, Carrie Brown.
That was awesome.
Okay. So thanks, guys. And we'll see you next time on Keto Life Support. Bye. Thank you so much for joining us on Keto Life Support. If you'd like more, you can join our friendly Facebook group, Keto Life Support. Can't find it? Go to ketolifesupport.com. If you ever want to suggest a topic for discussion, that would be the place to do it. We'd really, really appreciate it if you would go to your podcast app and subscribe, because that's awesome. And what would be super awesome is if you'd be so kind as to write a review for us. Though we would love it if that review was awesome, just writing a review is all we ask. So have a fabulous keto week, and we'll see you next time.